Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So for the grammar lesson, we're going to study the first type of full sentence. And as a note, when I'm doing vocabulary, a lot of times since I'm going fast, I don't mention all the times that the word has come before, but it's a very important exercise to do for oneself. Remember, like iyaya came before as iyaka. Laqa, talaqa came before as wa idha laqul ladina. If you can remember those things, that means you mastered that word. It means you mastered that word, you can stop worrying about that word. So please, it's a very good habit to remember those words that came before. And even if you can remember even the root letters in a different version, that's even better. So anyways. So now we're going to talk about sentences. There are two types of sentences that we've run into when we've done vocabulary. One is the sentences that start with fi'l, ones that start with ism. As a side note, either of these can have a harf in the beginning, you just ignore the harf. I mean, you translate it, but it doesn't define what kind of sentence it is. The two types are fi'liya and ismiya. Both of them can have harf in the beginning, but it doesn't really matter. The harf is just there for meaning. The type is either fi'liya or ismiya. Today we had this, فَأَزَلَّهُمَا الشَّيْطَانِ. And you have to be careful because in Arabic, in fi'liya sentences, sometimes the subject comes after the verb. So shaitan made them slip, not they made shaitan slip or anything like that. Okay? That wasn't funny. Who made me laugh? Okay. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا is the ism ismiya. Okay? الَّذِينَ is the ism. And so if it starts with the ism, then, I mean, there's a harf here, but again, you ignore all the beginning harf. الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. Again, there's also a harf here, right? But again, you go to the next word. Ismiya alladhina kafaru. Here, this is the type of sentence that we're going to talk about today. Okay, this one we'll talk about obviously once we cover the verbs, because we haven't even covered verbs yet. So, the thing that you have to remember about nominal sentence, it can be confused with possessive and descriptive phrases, the last two lessons that we had. Because all three of these are collections of ism, normally. Okay? They can be just two words, and you'll have to do, if it's made of just two words, you'll have to differentiate between sifa mawsuf, idafa, and jumla. It could be either of them, just with two words. All three of those things can have more than two words, obviously, also. Okay? So you have to kind of put them all. They are divided into mubtada, which is usually the first word, khabar, which is usually the second word, but that's not always the case. Okay? Sometimes the khabar can come before the mubtada, sometimes mubtada can come before the khabar. But in English, if you know English grammar, they are known as subject and predicate. So if you know that, it's good. The other thing that you should know is that in the khabar can be a verb itself, right? In a jumla ismiya, if you start with the ism, automatically you're jumla ismiya. So you have to have mubtada and khabar. But you can also have verbs in the middle also. Inna alladhina kafaru sawa'un alayhim. That is a jumla ismiya. It can start with alladhina, but there is a kafar. So you can have verbs. It actually pretty much in either case. You can have it in either case. Usually the khabar can start even with the verb. The mubtada cannot start with the verb. Okay. So again, I wrote here mubtada can be a word. It can also be a whole descriptive phrase. So you can have two words within the mubtada, that's the descriptive phrase, or a possessive phrase. The second can be all of the above, or also can be a verb. It can just be a verb. Mubtada cannot just be a verb. It can be a combination, like alladhina kafaru can be mubtada, but not just kafaru. Kafaru though can be khabar. Okay, just a verb.
Ya Bani Israel is a mubtada.
Mubtada, yeah.
The score is in the
We'll talk about that specifically because that's a definite. Okay. So ya Bani Israel is a mubtada. Now, like descriptive phrase and unlike possessive phrase, there is agreement in number and gender. What do I mean? Possessive phrase does not have to have agreement in number and gender. Does not. Descriptive has to have agreement in number, gender, also in i'rab and definiteness, right? But so I'm trying to always show you the difference between descriptive phrase, mubtada, and nominal sentence of two words. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. So, like I said, you can have agreement in number and gender. However, the other two categories, there may or may not be agreement. So definiteness. Do you all remember what definiteness is? We just reviewed definiteness. It is 6 categories, include everything with a pronoun, everything mudaf, anything with alif lam, anything with that is a proper name. So all those are definite. Usually the first set, meaning the first set of words or the first word, is definite and the second is indefinite. So ar-rajulu kabir. The man is big. And that is how you know where to put the is. Okay? Because there's no is, are, were, and none of those things are present in Arabic. But you have, when you translate into English, they will be present. So how do you know that this is not the big rajul or something like that? Because one is definite, the other is indefinite. You know it's mubtada khabar. It's a nominal sentence. It's not sifa mawsuf. Because that would be what? Ar-rajulu al-kabiru, because definiteness has to match. So there's no is. That would be just a phrase. This is with the is. That's what makes it a sentence. Sometimes the second set can also be definite though. But you usually need a pronoun to distinguish from sifa mawsuf. So if you had said, what if I want to say, the man is the big one. Okay? The man that we're talking about is the big one. The big or the biggest. You would have to say ar-rajulu huwal kabir. Ar-rajulu huwal kabir. Otherwise, there's no way to distinguish between ar-rajulu al-kabir, which is the big man, and the man is the big one. The man is the big one. Okay, so another example that I put here, al-yawmul akbar, the biggest day, versus al-yawmu huwal kabir, the day is the biggest, or I can say al-yawmu huwal akbar. Okay, just so I can keep it the same. So you know it's a difference between huwa. You have to put the huwa there if you want to make it a sentence. The day is, see the ayahs, is. To make the is appear in the English translation, you have to put the huwa in the middle. Otherwise, the English people who are translating your sentence will think it's just sifa mawsuf. The biggest day versus the day is the biggest. Biggest day, day is the biggest. Biggest day, day is the biggest. Okay? So, but usually, first is definite, second is indefinite, and in that case, you don't need the huwa because that's not sifa mawsuf. You know, if there's mismatch in definiteness, not sifa mawsuf.
So the example of first set definite and second indefinite is zalikal al-kitab is definite.
That, okay, that's a good question. Zalika al-kitab. Actually, they are both definite also. Why do you not need a huwa? You can use huwa. Actually, it's preferred. In Smart Standard Arabic, it's preferred to say Zalika huwal kitab. Because both are definite. Pronouns, all types of pronouns, demonstrative, all of them are definite. Al-kitab is different because al-plan. However, Zalika al-kitab is never used as just that book, almost. In Modern Standard Arabic, that usage is becoming more and more common. In the Quran, though, it always means that is the book. Okay? That there are other examples. For example, one second. Since you brought it up, I want to discuss that because it's a good question. There are examples in your book about that very thing that you're asking, Zalika. Okay, so it's in lesson 13 we're covering right now. Let me see. So, examples include Zalika huwal fawzul azim comes in the Quran. That is with this rule for. Okay. However, Zalikal fawzul azim also comes in the Quran. Zalikal khizyul azim also comes in the Quran. So, and Zalika huwal fawzul, Zalikal fawzul both come in the Quran. Zalikal kitabu comes in the Quran. So, as you can see, for Zalika and demonstrative pronouns, there's an exception. You don't need the huwa, but still it's preferred to use Zalika huwa if you're making your own sentence. Okay?
What about Rajulun Kabir if none of them are definite?
If none of them, what is Rajulun Kabirun? That is a sifa mawsuf, right? So Rajulun Kabirun is a big man versus Ar-Rajulu Al-Kabiru, the big man. But both of those things are sifa mawsuf. There's no is. You're not forming a complete sentence because there's no is. One Ar-Rajulu Kabirun would be the man is big because there's a mismatch in definiteness, which is important. Okay, remember, possessive phrases usually have, usually they have the same definiteness, but it can be different, okay? So the first is always definite, The first word is always definite because that's the rule of idafa. The second can be definite or indefinite. Usually it's definite. Okay. Descriptive, always the same definiteness. Always the same definiteness. Okay. Sorry for I typo. Sometimes I misspeak. So just ask questions if you're confused. Okay. But possessive phrase usually same definiteness. Descriptive always have this. That's the rule of descriptive phrase. So that's for definiteness. So number, gender, same. Just like descriptive phrase, definiteness, the slide discusses, is usually different, and if it is the same, you have to usually put a huwa or hiya, depending on the gender, or hum, depending on if it's many people. And i'rab may be same or different also. Usually i'rab is the same, and it's usually dhamma. Allahu ghafurur rahim. Allahu ghafurur rahimun. Ar-rajulu huwal kabiru, or ar-rajulu kabirun. The tanween is not the same because the definiteness, right? You don't put tanween on definite things, usually, unless it's a proper name. I said that quickly, but the type of i'rab is usually dhamma, and it could be single or double. Single is for the definite part, double for the indefinite, usually. Ar-rajulu kabirun. Is that clear? I mean, that's just a rule. You don't put tanween on things with alif lam. That's just, you don't do that. But so the tanween rule is not important here. What the important thing is usually is dhamma, and in certain cases when you have harf in the middle, before the mubtada, before the khabar, or in the beginning of the mubtada, in the beginning of the khabar, it can change the i'rab so they don't have to match. Okay, so these are the i'rab of these two sentences that come in the Quran. Or actually not both of these. The second sentence comes in the Quran, the first I just made up. Ar-rajulu fil adab. Na'udhu, we don't want to be this rajul, but the man is in punishment, is in the punishment. Ar-rajulu fil adabi. They don't match. Okay, but that's because the harf came in the middle. The second thing I want to point out from this whole thing is the khabar, and both are definite, right? Both are definite. I mean, both of the noun parts are different, but this is a whole other thing because it has fi in it. So you don't have to put huwa fil adab like that. That's not necessary because there is another word already in the middle. Sifa mawsuf won't be like this ever. This is cannot. You should never confuse it with sifa mawsuf. If there's a word between, it's not sifa mawsuf. Okay. So what the point of this bullet is that they may be different if there's a harf somewhere in the sentence. Inna Allah, because of the inna, this became ha, mafu. And we'll discuss the specific rules of i'rab later, but just to point out, usually it's both of them are dhamma, either singular or tanween. So remember, sifa mawsuf must have the same i'rab, and idafa cannot have the same i'rab. So this is in between of both idafa and sifa mawsuf. Sifa mawsuf match in everything, okay? They just match in everything. Idafa has kasra in the so cannot, again, this is a misspeak. Usually not. 99% they won't have the same i'rab because the second one has to have a kasra. The first one usually has something like a dhamma. But if the first one is after like a preposition, then even that can have a kasra. So I'll say 90%. But the rule is that the second word of idafa has a kasra. The first one can have whatever that is appropriate for that word. Okay, for example, يَعْلَمُ غَيْبَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. غَيْبَ السَّمَاوَاتِ Fatha, Kasra, they're different. Bani Israel, one is equivalent of a Fatha, one is Israela. That Fatha is actually a Kasra. So that is one rare instance when both are actually the same. So that's one of the 10%. But anyway, at least you understand the point, right? What I'm trying to say is idafa, the rule is a Kasra, but the idafa doesn't say anything about the first word. So they may be different. Okay? Usually they are different.